Wow, I heard that. Good for you. Feel better now?
Yeah.
You look good in there. I'm gonna have to talk Rob out of his car. What do you think?
I think one Volkswagen project at a time for me.
Oh, weak. Weak.
I know.
You're not a proper Volkswagen owner.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're not a proper Volkswagen owner.
Where the hell am I gonna put it all?
Your yard's bigger than mine.
That's true. I also have dogs. They'll get into everything. It smells
Sorry.
weird. You smell it?
Nope. What happened there? Why is that in there? Oh, there's a thing on it.
smells like
Yes. Alright. Well, a couple things. One of the first questions I got to ask is, does the indicator on the dashboard work? And yes, it does. But one of the problems I'm having is that even when the turn signal is not switched, the indicator is on. And you probably notice there's also an indicator flashing over here. And I believe it's actually that indicator that's causing me the problem. Now, some of the people online that I have read that use this particular switch before have said to insert a diode in the line to prevent feedback from the circuit, but that doesn't make any sense to me. At least not on a Volkswagen. I just can't wrap my head around how they think that's supposed to work. If I were to put such thing in the circuit, it's either going to work exactly the same as before, or if I put it in backwards, it just won't work at all. Experts, internet experts, you know how they are. But you also have to keep in mind I'm using a two-prong flasher, as the instructions say down there, so I literally connected the blue and black wires together as it said, and now I have a problem.
That's a lot of parts.
Actually, there's less parts than there were. We used a lot of them already. There's a lot of spares in there, but a lot of those parts, I'm glad he left it in there. There was a YouTuber that told me, you should just take Tubbs and have him clean out all that crap that's in the car. And great, if he did that, then I wouldn't have had anything I needed to fix the car. Because those are all the parts for the car. There was miscellaneous wiring components, electricals, switches, even distributor parts, stuff I needed. And if you took it all out, that would have been stupid.
Oh, look.
So he's going to get all his junk back when he gets it back. What's that?
It's a pressure plate.
Nope.
A flywheel?
Nope.
No?
One more try.
I don't know that.
Starts with a C. Not that one.
You can't say that on YouTube. Crankshaft?
No, well, no.
I don't know.
It does kind of attaches to it somewhat, I guess. It's a clutch.
But
It's a clutch disc, yeah, it's a clutch disc. Up on the fuse box, you can see the orange relay that I put in there. That is specifically an LED flasher relay. The stock one that I have right here wasn't going to work, so whoever decided to rewire this whole thing didn't take into account that LEDs don't create enough draw to make the stock mechanical flasher work. These are actually dependent on heat. Heat causes the little spring to release, and that's that little ting, 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 ting that you hear inside of these. That one is all solid state, so it doesn't do any of that stuff. Now, the pinout on it was completely different. This is 3-pin, that's a 2-pin. One of these pins is actually a ground. That does not use ground. So 2 of the wires that were on here, I actually had to pull them out of the fuse block and swap them, and then plug that relay in, and that made that work. So anybody in the future that comes along and tries to stuff one of these in here, it probably won't work. It would be nice to have it work, but I don't think we need it. But, you know, because I'm an overachiever, I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to show you guys how it's going to work on here. But I think it's this light being connected in circuit that's making this one flash. Otherwise, when you turn the turn signals on, they actually do work like they're supposed to. So I thought it had something to do with the brake lights and all the other stuff, but once everything was hooked up, you know, this is when the weirdness started happening. But I think it has everything to do with that. So what we're going to do is turn this off, and we're going to disconnect that wire. Now, I've already cut into this, so I know where to disconnect that. That blue wire is for the indicator. This is the Chinese wiring harness. Now it is disconnected, just like that. Now when we go in the car, willing to bet you, everything is off. No indicator there, no indicator here. And if we turn this on, now it's flashing like it's supposed to. So again, that indicator is where our problem lies. That can still be plugged in the circuit. It's going to need to be, and this is kind of interesting how it works. It works before the switch. So that way, if you use left or right, no matter what you turn on, it turns on the indicator. And this one probably just draws too much current. The one in the dashboard probably uses so little current that it's not pulling down hard enough on the relay, the flasher relay, to make it function. So that's what it needs to be, is it needs to go after the switch. And if I just connect it to after the switch, I can only choose one of two sides, left or right. I can have it only flash one of two ways. If I want to connect it to both, that's where the diode is going to come into play. So that way when I turn on my left-hand or right-hand turn signal, it doesn't backfeed through it and then turn on the turn signals on the opposite side from where I'm meaning them to go. Alright, so this is not a very hard circuit. This is pretty simple. I just have to skin a couple of wires, and I'll show you what we got going on here. Welcome back to DuckmanCycles and VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. We're back today with this 1971 Super Beetle that was an absolute wiring nightmare. As you probably remember from the last video, we actually got this thing running. And running pretty good it was. Had to do a little bit of tuning, and I think I still have to do a little bit of tuning, and we're going to play with it a little bit in this video. I don't expect that it's going to be finalized, if you will, before we get the video finished, because it's going to rain. Right now there's a little bit of a mist in the air, and the humidity's been up all day, and temperature just started to fall, so there's a possibility the front may have blown through. We didn't get any real rain, but work with me here and see what comes up in this video. We're also going to wrestle with the lights a little bit, because the brake lights and the turn signals were not working properly, and I think it may have something to do with how I hooked up the indicator light on the dashboard, which is interesting. And it might also have a little something to do with the battery, because in the last video when I went to start the engine, there wasn't enough juice in that battery to get it started, so the voltage was kind of low. And as we know, computers, LEDs, and things work a little weird when they're under voltage, and I think that may be the case with the flasher in this car. So anyway, the battery's charged up now, it should run. So we're going to go through everything once again and see if we can get this thing finalized and get the lighting working once and for all. So like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to pluck the dingle belly so you get updates every time I upload a video. Check out duckshit.net for all my different social media links. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back right after the intro. The wind was a bit noisy for this scene here, but I was doing a light test. Because I can't actually get to see it, I decided to record it so I could review it in the video. But what I did was I turned on the taillights, hit the brakes, and that all seemed to be working fine. But when I turned on the taillights, and then I turned on the left-hand turn signal, the turn signal was flashing kind of quick, really short instance that it was staying on for, and then the right-hand turn signal would just kind of come on solid, but real dim. This is part of the problem I was having, and it was really quite a simple solution, but I didn't figure it out until later when I got the engine running. Alright, down here is our wiring harness. We already know the green is the right side, and the yellow is the left side. These are diodes. For those of you that aren't familiar with electronics, what diodes do, essentially, is they are check valves, except in the electronic form, so they only allow current to flow in one direction. So what I need to do is, this here is now disconnected. I'm going to terminate that and cap it off. I'm going to take one diode, connect it in the correct polarity, from this to go to the yellow, and then another one from this to the green. And that will prevent my backfeeding the circuit. Now, what we're going to do here, I think we're just going to skin the wire back a little bit. I'm not going to go too overkill. Soldering iron again would be nice, but I don't think we're going to get into that in here. I think it's I should be able to just use some of that fancy shrink wrap. Which, by the way, you guys, I don't know where that comes from. I'm trying to find some markers on there, and it doesn't have anything except for what size it's supposed to go on. But I'm really happy with this stuff. This was just a trash pick. Rob found this on the curb around the corner from his house, and as soon as he saw it, he just grabbed it. He knew it was going to be useful. So anyway, we're going to hook up a couple diodes, and let's get this thing working. Okay, we're going to pull out the wires we need here from this harness. We got our green and our yellow. And these are my good wire strippers. These are the ones I should have been using when I was doing all the wiring the other day. The only reason I didn't use them is because, well, they're in a toolbox on the other end of the house, And the other ones were going to work just fine for me, so I didn't bother. Now I'm not going to cut the wire. I'm just going to break the skin on it and stretch it back. So we don't need to break this circuit, we just need to connect to it. So just like that, I'm going to get in here. I'll do it again on this one. And that worked much better on that one. Just got a booger. Alright, booger removed. As you guys have been watching me shrink tubing all along, and I got a lot of compliments on how I terminate my wires on the last couple videos. Usually I get razzed for how I do things. Duckman, you're not supposed to do it that way. This time around, people said a lot of nice things, and people are really enjoying my wiring videos, so I might start doing a lot more of this stuff in the future. I never figured that wiring would be so interesting to people, but I guess they find it so might as well go with it, right? Whatever works. Alright, we got those stretched back. This blue wire needs to go into one of these through a diode. These are diodes. You probably noticed they're striped on one side. The current flows against the stripe, so it goes through this way, not the other way around. Typically, these are an electronic circuit demonstrated as a triangle with a bar. You can imagine that bar being the side with the triangle. Now, the triangle does not indicate the direction that the power flows because it actually flows opposite of the triangle. So we need to put this guy into circuit here. A little thing I used to say in my electronics class that used to piss off my teacher, but it helped me to remember and the class never forgot it. The electricity goes in the cat and comes out the anus. Alright, so in this case, let me go ahead and push the shrink wrap up here too. We're going to have two diodes, 1 and 2. Both of the stripy ends are facing up. They're going to connect to this blue wire. How do you know that, Duckman? Well, this is a lot of years of experience. This is not something that you learn overnight. Everybody always wants to take the shortcuts and ask me how to hook things up, but they don't understand how it works. Now, this is this is going to be the correct way to do it. Okay. You know what? I probably should have put a bigger piece of shrink wrap on this because once I shrink down over these other two pieces, that one's not going to stretch over it anymore, and it's going to be really hard to get on there, so let's use a big one. Alright, now we have two separate legs here. And you don't want these legs to be touching together in any way. This will be a backfeed in our circuit. If these do touch together, when you turn on the right-hand turn signal or the left-hand turn signal, it's going to be the same as turning on your hazards. Now, it doesn't matter which one of these goes where, because again, these are just check valves, and they're just stopping the current from flowing in a single direction. This is eliminating all backfeeding problems. All right. Put this one on here. All right. They're running a new sprinkler across the street, and it's loud as hell. Pretty damn obnoxious, especially when I'm trying to record a video, don't you guys think? That's just the way it goes. I want these to be wrapped nice and snug so they're not going to come apart. This shrink wrap has been awesome, though. I've been very, very happy with this. Once I get these things wrapped on there, they're not going anywhere. Alright, there's our circuit right here. The blue is now connected to two little diodes, which are check valves, which are going to prevent the current from backfeeding between these two colored wires. Well, they're all colored, between the yellow and the green. So that way they only send power off to the blue and not to the other side.
This is what makes time travel possible.
It's half of a full bridge rectifier, if you will.
Full bridge rectifier!
Alright, then this one is the old wire that used to go to the blue, and this one needs to be just closed and capped off. In fact, there's no reason for it to even be here anymore, so we're just gonna snip it. This, because it's been a little while since I used a diode, I'm actually gonna test this before I shrink wrap everything, just because I'm a little rusty. I don't know if I did them right. It's been a long time since I put one of those in circuit. So let's see what happens. All right, turn our power on. We got a turn signal, we got a flasher, we got an indicator. And we now have a left-hand turn signal. Should have one back here too. Good. That one's not on. And the one up here, this is Eleanor's computer box, by the way. That one is currently off too. This is Eleanor's wiring harness computer. This is my breadboard and setup for it. We'll be talking more about that in the future. So I got a very, very complex wiring harness system, which is going to be all touchpad activated. That's going in Eleanore. All right, well, we know that's working. It's nice seeing this thing work. Let's see if it stays off when it's off. It's off. It's off. Let's go right-hand side. Indicator. Indicator on. Off here. We're off here. We're on there. Should be on up front. We are on. All right, everything seems to be working up here. We're gonna go ahead and shrink up the tubing. Now, one thing I noticed, there's no hose over here on the gas tank. And this is something, unfortunately, I missed in the last video when I was doing wiring, because when I was shrinking shrink wrap, all of a sudden I had a 3-inch flame that was shooting out, and I couldn't figure out where the fire was coming from. So yeah, the gas tank is vented right there. There should be a piece of fuel line on it, just going underneath the car, or vacuum line, I should say, going under the car somewhere, or up and above and over the top here and back down or something. But anyway, it's not. So I had a little flamethrower in here, and just quickly I put my thumb over it and put it out. But had the flame have gone back into the tank, we could have had a bigger problem. All right, here's our little diode circuit that we got. We're gonna slide up the shrink tubing on each side, just like so. The plan is to cover the diode and the junction points where they electrically connect to. I'm gonna use my trusty blowtorch because it creates that nice blue flame that's so much hotter and shrinks this stuff so much faster. Again, I'm looking out for that opening on that gas tank, because I don't need to start another fire in here. Alright, that's good. Now we should be able to stretch. Woo, still hot. Ouchie, ouchie. And we might just let that sit a minute. Boy, that got real hot. Ouchie, ouchie. I'm sure somebody right now is asking for a schematic on this without understanding how it truly works. Look down in the video comments and I'm sure you'll see somebody doing exactly that. There, we got that last piece on there. Let's shrink that sucker up. Oops, scorched the wire by accident again. But we're good to go there. And this last one down here, we're just gonna give this a snip. I'm just gonna fold it over and just stuff it in there. Just like that. And we'll shrink that one up too. Helps if I don't get so damn close. I don't want to burn it. Even though I just did. Alright, well that little bundle that we just created down here should solve all the turn signal problems that I was having. It was causing things to act all kinds of weird, causing backfeeding, and it all had to do with the Chinese turn signal switch. I don't know why, but once it was a circuit with the wire coming from the brake light switch, things started acting goofy, and I think it all had to do with that indicator light. But anyway, it's working now. We got one down here. We got the one that's factory. All this stuff is working good. I still have to put a screw in the steering apparatus up here. That's why this is a little loose looking. It won't be loose at all when I tighten that up. But anyway, it looks like we got a screw missing from there too. Wonder why? Gonna have to look for that. No big deal. Everything else seems to be working though. Currently got it in gear, otherwise... No, it's not in gear. Okay. Well, it should start. Why is it not starting? You guys saw me run it in the other video. Uh-oh. We'll have to look at that too. Oh, you know what? I know why. It's because I disconnected the points so we don't accidentally fry them while we leave the ignition turned on. That's why it's not starting. Duckman did a smart. Yeah. Yep, there it is. This can go right back on here. Now I just stomped the throttle a bunch of times like an idiot. I might have actually just flooded it. Okay. Now let's see if it starts. And we got it. It's cold, but nice and shaky. It'll warm up and it'll be fine. Well, one thing's for sure, taking that indicator light out of the turn signal switch and moving it to a different location in the wiring harness with a couple of diodes brightened up all of my turn signals. It even brightened up the indicator lights on the dashboard, so it was probably a really wise move. I don't know exactly why it would have sucked everything down so much, but everything seems to be working really good right now. It's just, it's bright, it's no longer glitchy, and all the little problems went away, so success! We're gonna go with it. Right hand turn signal on. Right hand turn signal off. Brake lights off. Tail lights off. Something I haven't tried working with before is the 4-way flasher switch. That red knob back here. It's gonna work only with the power on, it's just the way it's set up, so that's gotta be on. 4-way flasher switch pulled. Just for grins, I got our tail lights on too. Your indicator light's flashing. The red indicator's flashing in the center. Let's see what she's doing. And there it is. Now I gotta admit, everything is so much brighter than it was. I think it has everything to do with that diode that I put in the circuit there. There was definitely something going on, and that indicator needed to be isolated from the rest of the circuit. It's just, it did not like being attached to the stock indicator at all. Just was not happy being there. Anyway, now that I've got it the way you see, everything works great. This is great. I mean, even the 4-way's working. I didn't think that was going to work at all. I was experimenting with it earlier, and I thought the switch was just faulty and it wasn't going to work. But anyway, it does. I'm happy with it. Yep, seem to be working up there too. So we're good. So it's working through that trailer adapter that I put in there. And then, of course, if we turn off the taillights, whoop, we should have 4-ways working without the outer rings. There they are. And they're very angular. If you look at them from a different angle, they're not quite as bright, but that's typical with LEDs for you. In here, I imagine we could pivot them and play with them a little bit because they're not solid mounted in there. They're very loosely installed. That's not my work. That's previous owner stuff. I don't think they'll vibrate themselves to ruin, but I guess time will tell. And then, of course, up front, yep, they're doing what they're supposed to do up here too. So I'm happy. Things are working. Things are working on here very, very well. Now, one of the other things we need to have a look at was that little spark that appeared to be popping out of the top of the alternator here. It was sitting. Now you can tell just how rusty and dirty this connection is. In fact, you know what? The wire's not even tight. That's why it was shooting sparks. So this alternator is probably doing what it's supposed to do as far as charging current is concerned, but if it doesn't have a good connection, it's gonna do all kinds of weird stuff. All right, well, we're gonna put a little lube on that nut, try to loosen that thing off of there. We're gonna sand down the terminals, and then we're gonna put it all back together. And then, well, I can't really shrink wrap that one, but I guess we'll just put some like Vaseline on it or something to keep the moisture out of it. I got plenty of that around the house. A little dielectric grease is good for you. As I was loosening this by hand, no matter how rusty and how awful it looked, it didn't need any lube at all. It wasn't even a finger tight. Yes, the battery's already disconnected. Otherwise, if I touch that to any part of that chassis, or even if I lift it up on this little thing and this pin touched the chassis while this wire was on it, we would be having problems right now. A lot of little sparkler kind of problems, should I say. Well, this thing needs to be polished. Wow, it didn't need much at all. This connector, I think, is fairly new. I think the only reason it looks so bad is because it was out in the weather. It had been neglected for probably almost a year and a half. And then this nut got rusty, and then the rust transferred itself onto the next closest piece of metal. And well, what you see is what you get. I think what I'm going to do is put another washer on this too. I think it needs one on the top and the bottom. Shit. Well, maybe we're going to need 2 new washers because that one disappeared. Alright, 2 new washers was the answer here. Make sure you put the spacer back on, and you notice it has a little ridge on it that presses down into the case of the unit here. And that is critical because if that doesn't go on, it will not insulate, and then you will have a short and probably a fire because this line is not fuse protected. And you can thank Volkswagen for that. That was not my doing. Alright, this nut can go back on now. The goal here is to get everything sandwiched down nice and tight with these nice clean washers, which should give us a good electrical connection. Got my wrench here, and I'm using a line wrench on purpose. Line wrenches are great for electrical connections too. Sometimes if you have a long bolt or something, you can just slot it right on. Anyway, that turned out to be just a 10 millimeter. We should be good to go. Let's check for charging voltages and see what we got. Here's my trusty multimeter. I have had this for 30 years. I can't believe it. I actually built this in high school. And it needs some 3D printing for the back side of the display because unfortunately some of the rubbers and stuff have shrunk. So it needs to be squeezed a little tighter. But this meter, I built this sucker in school, and it's treated me well for over all those years. In fact, it needs a new battery right now too. It's had some problems over the years. The little beeper broke, for example, and I've been through a lot of different sets of probes. I like the alligator clip ones for automotive stuff, so it's a lot easier to hook things up. But we got our positive here. Negative can be pretty much anywhere on the chassis. And currently it says we have 15 volts. That's clearly not right. I'm going to say this meter needs to be recalibrated or something's wrong dramatically with the battery in this vehicle. Let me grab my other meter. Yeah, that other one needed a battery pretty badly. Anyway, these don't have the nice alligator clip probes on it, which are great for automotive, but this one will still get the job done. Let's check for voltage once again, against the chassis, against the positive. Come on. There we go. And it says we have 6.5 volts. Man, does none of my meters work right here? Or is this a 6-volt Super Beetle? There's no way this is a 6-volt Super Beetle. Everything is just retarded. Man, it's like, this is electronics stupid retard shit day. Yeah, it swears up and down that we have 6.7 volts. This was a free Harbor Freight meter. Who knows what the hell's wrong with it. You know what it's good for? It's good for taking the battery out of and putting in my good meter. That's what it's good for. Yeah, there's no way. There's no way this is 6 volts. Unless something else is wrong. Maybe something else is wrong I'm not seeing here. Yeah, okay, well. Alright, let's try it again. We're using the Harbor Freight battery in my trusty multimeter. Look at that. 12.5 volts. That seems good for the battery that's on there. Let's get these wires up and out of the way. In fact, I might even just take this meter completely away from this engine. But we're going to fire it up and then we're going to see what kind of voltage we get. Okay, engine's still doing a little warming up, but we got 14.7 volts. This 14.4 is usually about what you're looking for at maximum. this meter probably needs to be calibrated with a fresh battery. Yes, I can actually do that with this thing. And this engine's not running quite that great yet because it's still running cold, but good news is we have a charging system that works. Well, actually, that did it. A little rev, and now it's running on all 4 cylinders. Well, let's move it again to another spot in the yard. I gotta put some air in one of the tires anyway. Look, flat worst. Not cool. Now that I'm seeing this out of the grass, I'm realizing it's a lot lower than I thought it was. But it still wasn't on the ground, so it was okay to drive around the yard on without breaking the feed. Alright, with the lights stuff going, essentially this car has just become street legal. Everything except for the registration and the fact that I haven't got an insurance card for it, but that's not going to stop me from attempting to take it out for a quick ride. I don't know what it's going to do. We're going to see. But this little car is getting there. There's really not a whole lot left to do on it. I've already adjusted the brakes. I still need to adjust the clutch, by the way. Yeah, maybe I should do that before I go anywhere. Maybe I can even reach the wing nut from up underneath here. Yeah, in fact, yep, I can see it. Can you see it? Right there. See if I can get an adjustment on there before I drive it off. Feels it's way too tight, and judging by the Ford Chevy guy that assembled it, yeah, they didn't know what they were doing, so the clutch pedal just feels like crap. I mean, you barely touch it at all and the thing starts to release. Yeah, way too tight. And then of course when you put the clutch to the floor and then you start to let it up, it's like you gotta go almost to the complete top of the travel before it starts to grip. Obnoxious, not the right way to drive one of these. There should be so much play. I forget what it is exactly, but way more than what it's got. So we'll get this thing adjusted and we'll go take a quick ride. Bitty's playing in the dirt. Bitti, always dig a hole there. You always dig that hole. And that hole, I always step in it in the morning. I'm gonna have to bury it back down again. It's a good 6 inches deep. Stupid chicken. Well, all the valves are adjusted and everything on this. I set the timing on it. I chose to not static time it, but rather do full advance because it's a 009 on there. And I gotta say, it runs pretty smooth right now. And it sounds good. Some people in the last video where I ran this thing said all kinds of nonsense about it sounding all clattery. Well, you know what? Volkswagen engines naturally do. Because they are pushrod engines, and it's all air-cooled without a water jacket to help silence things. So what you hear, you hear. But of course, the valves were not adjusted properly the last time at all, so they would have been louder anyway. But you know, Ford and Chevy guys, they all know more than I do, right? But it's running good. I did take it for a test ride, and it seems like it maybe lacks a little power under load. I don't know why yet. It's a good possibility. I might just need to change all the spark plugs on it. I defouled all of them, put them all back in, re-gapped them, you know, the works, and everything was just out of whack on this engine. I mean, spark plug gaps weren't even set right. Mismatched spark plug wires. One of them was misfiring so bad because it was leaking out of its insulator. Everything was just falling apart on this engine, but I mean, she runs good now. She runs real good. Yeah, maybe I'll take it for another ride and see what I think. while it's really torquey, all things considering, but still, it sounds to me, and it still feels like it's running on 3 cylinders. But I still can't believe just how torquey it is if that's the case. I mean, this thing's got guts, and if I can get it to run on all 4 cylinders, it's gonna go. So that's certainly not a stock 1600 on there. This thing, this thing has a little more than that. I would venture to say 1776 or better. Probably one of the reasons why it doesn't like to idle down low either. I have to crank the idle up just a little bit. It's probably cammed. It doesn't really have a lope that I can tell, but it just does not like to idle really low like a stock engine. It's got to be tweaked just a little. Anyway, I'm going to have to fiddle with the engine and see what I can figure out as to why it's not running on all cylinders. All the valves did look good, all the springs looked good, everything was adjusted properly. I don't know what more it could be. I'm going to have to hunt and peck. But, I don't know, I'll get it figured out like everything else. Just one of those things I need to find a little more time for and see if we can get this thing finished. Well, but anyway, as you saw, flashes on this thing do work properly, and now, of course, since I have the wiring hooked up with some diodes in there, since I was able to find that problem, and the battery is now charged properly, it was actually run down a little bit from me just testing all the lights and everything on it, that some of the things didn't work properly without a proper 12 volts in it. I didn't check the voltage to see what it was, but when it was down, the LEDs started doing some finicky things. You know, they weren't lighting up in the patterns they were supposed to, yada, yada, yada. Even the flasher was flashing in an irregular pattern. Anyway, things do work now, and they work really, really well. I'm very happy with the switch panel that I installed in here. Just switching everything out rather than leaving what was in there is just much better. That's interesting. Wonder if our oil pressure switch stuck. Yeah, that's what it was. I had to crank the engine just a little bit to make that start moving again. Now, that's our running lights, as you know. I turned on that over there. You see the gauges just lit up, because all that is wired into it, so that works. Turn signals are working. We have 2 indicator lights. We have the stock one. I got the one on the Chinese box that's over there, catching a glare on it, and of course we got the other side as well. Kind of interesting that the lights flash alternately. I don't know why they do. Technically, they're on the same circuit, so I'd have to reevaluate that to figure out exactly how that works, because I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. But putting those diodes in there was enough to make this work properly and then stop the center light from flashing, which only flashes when the 4-ways are on. And again, it flashes alternately with the one that's on the dashboard in there. But things in here work great. I'm just overjoyed. There's our headlights, of course. Hey, I don't know if they're aimed correctly. They actually look like they're pointing a little bit low, but that's easy enough adjustment. Just grab the whole bucket and just turn it. That stuff is functional. Running lights, of course, and there it is. Turn signal. Using that little trailer adapter makes it work. There is no tick-tock in here because, once again, there's no mechanical flasher. And there's no relay necessary on the flashing circuit. I mean, I could add something else, I suppose. Add a little beeper or buzzer or something, but I don't know, it's more of a nuisance thing. A lot of people would just say they, don't want it. The fuel gauge was working. I don't know what's going on right now. Maybe when I took her for a ride earlier, something shook loose. I'll have to check the wiring on the back of that. But yeah, it was working earlier. It didn't seem to have any problems, and it was just above the reserve. That was up around here somewhere, and it's not a full tank at all. I mean, I threw 5 gallons in it twice because I did a lot of test running here, and the thing was running extremely rich. I'm going to have to go through that carburetor also and see if I can figure out if there's any more adjustments that I can do to it, or maybe even if I have to rejet it. The fact that it seems like it's running on 3 cylinders still, I don't quite get that. It just doesn't have the revs that it's supposed to. I would figure it would have more pickup. Got lots of torque, but it just doesn't accelerate fast like it's running on 3 cylinders. So, I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure that out. But everything here works great. Don't forget to likey, comment, and subscribe, and plug that dingle belly so you get updates every time I upload a video. Check out duckshit.net for all my different social media links. Thanks you guys for watching, but stay tuned, because as soon as it gets dark, we're going to see what these lights look like, because people were asking, hey, what do they look like in the dark? So I'll try to give you a demonstration video of that, and hopefully the damn dogs won't be barking. Thanks for watching. I think it's dark enough. It doesn't get much darker than this with all these street lights on here, so let's check out some lighting. First things first, I was challenged to get the dome light working, and much to my surprise, it worked on its own. It just started working when I got the wiring hooked up properly to the stock harness, so apparently that was not butchered and it has not been changed, so I'm glad it's there. Alright, let's go ahead and turn some stuff on. Here we go. We'll turn on our running lights for starters. Let's go ahead and show you what this looks like on the outside. There you go. There's our running lights down here. I'd like to put some brighter ones on there. I believe they're 194 bulbs. I'd like to use some 168s. I should make them about twice as bright as what they are. So that's the front. Then in the back, we've got our LEDs. There you go. Nice rings. And I gotta say, they're intense. Those are really intense. They are bright. Okay, let's go ahead and show you guys some headlight action. Headlights are on. Nice and bright too. There they are. I had a debate with somebody about what color the lights are. They look pretty white to me, but the bezel on the light is actually orange. And you can see that there by looking at it. So, I mean, it's not illegal to have a colored bezel. The light itself just must light up white, in which case it does. So we got proper headlights on here. They seem to work pretty good. Then we have, and this is kind of like a modern vehicle. When you put your turn signal on, you know how in modern cars, the running light will dip out. And that's exactly what it does there with that trailer adapter that I put on. So we have a turn signal up front here, and just it's installed in the running light, single filament. In the back, we've got LEDs, of course. Here it is, extremely bright. My God, that's bright. Seeing as how they're motorcycle lights, that's probably a good thing. Let me pull on the four-way flasher for you, so you guys can see just how bright it actually gets with both of them on. And this also works for the brake lights too, by the way. So that same filament, if you will, despite being LEDs, is what will light up. And man, it picks up every single lens imperfection, every single bit of dust that's between the glass layers. It's just so bright. Well, that's pretty amazing to me. I think I'm happy with what we got. I'm glad to see that everything is now working properly. It's a bunch of little quirky things. You know, those diodes need to be put in place. I had to drop a couple resistors in a couple places that I didn't discuss, but that was just because there was LEDs in the circuit that just weren't working right with some things. I also had to make sure the battery was charged. I mean, it may not seem like it's an important thing, but without adequate voltage, some of these things weren't doing what they're supposed to. For example, that ring that's on the outside, when the voltage was low, the entire thing would light up, and it would flash alternately. It acted goofy. It's just funny what lower voltage did. But when I went to hit the start button to start it, and it barely cranked, that's when I knew what was wrong there. And as soon as I hooked the charger to it and brought the voltage back up, everything worked again. So, just things to know, things to think about. Incandescent bulbs, of course, you don't have that problem with, but new technology. Stuff like LEDs and computers and things are very, very sensitive to voltage changes. But this is good. This is good. We've got our indicators and such working here on the dash. And we've got a turn signal indicator down there. We've got the one in the gauge right there. Let me go ahead and turn off this dome light so you guys can see some things better. There we go. That's what it would look like if you're driving. Of course, the gauges are lit up. You know, probably needs another bulb on this side over here on the right. But yeah, stuff is all working. We got our idiot lights both lit. Everything's working quite well. And turn our headlights back off. Here we go. Turn our signal back off. And the last thing is we gotta turn them running lights back off. Alright, well that about sums it up. Everything works quite well. Power off.